Fanfiction just in community. Hey guys, hope you all are doing well. In today's video we will be starting a new what if, which you can tell from the thumbnail and title. So let's start. Chapter 1. Love and Children. Bright sunny days come and go, but no day could be more special than this one. It was the day Tannen, the Blaze Meteor Dragon King, conceded to the devils for the sake of dragonkind. Tannen is given a domain in the underworld to nurture dragons in order to preserve their race, as there were very few unsealed dragons that remained in the world. Such of which are Great Red and Ophis, the two dragons Tannen feared the most. Thousands of years later, it's been a while, Tannen, a masculine shadowy figure, states from the archway of Tannen's quarters. Tannen felt a familiar yet extremely powerful presence, even more powerful than his, but could not recall who actually was speaking to him. He repeatedly searched his memory in hopes of finding out whose energy this was. He then felt a chill as he began to remember the presence. Tannen started sweating as his eyes dilated. He felt waves of death caress his crimson scales as the shadowy figure approaches. It can't be. Great Red. Tannen murmurs under his breath. The shadowy figure calmly and relaxingly responds, "Don't worry Tannen, I'm not here to hurt you. All I want to know about is the whereabouts of any pretty dragon ladies that may roam here." Tannen shrieks in response, then, almost crying, states, "Shush, shouldn't you be in the dimensional gap? Why are you here? What do you want with me?" Tannen's mind was well past its limits, as it begins to overheat. "All I want is a girlfriend who is a dragon. As much as I enjoy the dimensional gap, it's kind of getting boring. I don't want to live in the human world because I can't fly around as I please. I can't live in the underworld because of the devils and fallen angels that want me dead. All I want is some excitement. Some spice. I want a girl that can rock my world, yet be able to withstand the dimensional gap. And I need to do this before Ophis finds out I dipped," passionately exclaimed Great Red. Great Red then steps out of the darkness and reveals himself with an awe-inspiring boo. His 8-pack abs, his flawlessly carved pecs, his creased biceps, his masculine face, and his beautiful red hair. It's not a crimson red, like Serzex or Rias Grimoires. It's a bright flamboyant red that glistens in the presence of light. Tannen, still on the floor in complete shock, realizes that if he dissatisfies Great Red, then his life as a dragon and devil is over, and the dragon race would go extinct. As Tannen is attempting to process Great Red's words as his mind is near shutting down, he responds, "You mean, a mate?" Great Red retorts, "Exactly. I want her to be exciting and caring. That's all I want." Tannen, finally able to cope with Great Red's presence and request, responds shatteredly, "Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon. The familiar forest. As a devil, I can create a summoning circle there for you, as the only ones that can travel there are devils." "Well, the fuck you waiting for Tannen, hop to it." Great Red said jokingly, but Tannen took this as a serious threat, and his eyes went white for a few seconds as he nearly blacked out. He then got a grip, then prepared the summoning circle. "It's ready, Your Majesty," Tannen says as he gets on his knees with his head bowed to Great Red. "Thanks, Tannen, catch you later." Great Red exclaims as he vanishes from the room. Tannen sighs in relief, then proceeds to have nightmares about Great Red for the following 6 months. In the familiar forest. Tiamat. Great Red exclaims as he materializes in the familiar forest. To Great Red, the familiar forest is nothing short of grotesque. All of the prickly vines that dangle from gloomy trees with a dark velvet sky make Great Red feel on edge and invokes a slight amount of rage, as Great Red walks through. As the devils from the Leviathan household had just come to get their familiars, the familiar master was nowhere in sight because he leaves for the outside world and lives a normal life for a couple of weeks after devils come and get their familiars. Great Red, as he walks through the swampy forest, gradually feels a draconic presence rise, the closer he gets. Great Red eventually felt this presence fairly clearly and was able to directly pinpoint the source of this energy. Great Red was sure it was Tiamat. He then sprouts 10 draconic wings, with glistening scarlet wing frames and deep metallic gray wings. Great Red kicks off the ground with force that shattered the floor under him and left a shockwave that knocked some of the trees surrounding him down. Moving faster than the eye could see, he appears in front of a large cave and feels 2 presences. One of them felt like Tiamat, but one was on a whole other level. He then realized who it was and how he was unable to sense it. High-level dragons that want to be secretive are able to hide their presences completely. This is something Great Red, Tiamat, Ophis, Dedrag, Albion, and Vitra could do. Due to it being Great Red and his apt abilities of power control, he was able to sense these hidden energies at close proximities. All dragons other than Great Red and Ophis had similar presences, so Great Red immediately knew who it was. It was Ophis, the infinite dragon god. Great Red, acting similar to how Tannen was shaken. Why was the other strongest being in the history of existence with the girl he wished to see? Inside the cave, Great Red is funny, isn't he? I don't know why he's here, but it seems he forgot how to control his presence, said a white, seductive temptress with blue puckered lips and light blonde hair with blue highlights. She was stunningly beautiful, both in her style and her body. She had extremely large, voluptuous breasts and a slim waist. She was about 5 feet 9 feet, putting her almost a foot under Great Red, who was 6 feet 7. Bakas will always be Bakas, said a short, black-haired woman with stunning breasts, and cute magic girl style, similar to that of the head of the Leviathan house, Seraphal Leviathan. The only difference is that this girl's breasts were completely exposed, only covered by S drawn with black tape over each of her breasts. Back to Great Red. After gathering courage, he enters the cave as he felt that the energy emitted by Ophis and Tiamat were harmless and laced with no intention to fight. Great Red proceeds to say, Ophis, Tiamat, what are you two doing conversing together? Ophis, the black-haired beauty, responds, Baka Red, I came here simply to learn about the art of making children. Surely a pervert like you wouldn't understand. Pervert. Great Red roars as Tiamat, the large-bosomed seductress, begins to laugh. Great Red's power became pure and volatile, therefore, extremely destructive. The ground below Great Red shattered, as the debris began to rise. An ethereal yet horrifying and terrorizing deep crimson aura emerged from Great Red. Great Red, face covered by his hair, slowly glanced up and murmured, say that shit to me again, Ophis. Great Red was able to condense his power as soon as it erupted to prevent high-ranking supernatural forces from sensing it. You really are Baka Red. I said that because I'm trying to be familiar with you. Tiamat told me that men and women were created to make children. Even though we are genderless dragons, we both chose representative genders and should make the strongest child. Oh yeah, that doesn't mean I'm giving up the dimensional gap. Great Red's power dropped to near zero as the only thought that ran through his mind was, what the actual fuck? Great Red came here for Tiamat, but Ophis offered herself to him instead. The other most powerful existence. Why? Is this the real Ophis? Great Red could sense the distinct power of Ophis, so he knew for a fact it was her. Great Red's mind was internally combusted as he had always secretly wished for Ophis to be his mate. Tiamat snickered at Great Red's flustered red face that almost matched his hair color. Tiamat then opened a summoning circle and transported Ophis and Great Red to the dimensional gap. In the dimensional gap, oh Ophis. I didn't know that's how you felt. I, secretly, have always envied your body and you as a person. It's unfortunate that you came to hate me, but I am extremely delighted now. I love you, Ophis, Great Red courageously admits. Don't get me wrong, Baka. All I want is to have children with you. I am infinite, and thus have no feelings, and even if I did, I wouldn't date you in 1,000 years, Ophis grinningly retorts. Well, we'll see in 1,000 years, responded Great Red. So, about that baby. Fanfiction just in community forum more Issei. The pure-blooded dragon god by Fury Anime, High School DxD, Haisuku Ru D times D rated. T. English, Adventure and Romance. H. Issei. Rias G. Rainer. Kuroka. Words. 36k plus. Faves. 370. Follows. 422. Published. November 2, 2021. Updated. Jan 31 Chapter 2 Passion and Birth bold italics. Great Red speaking Chapter 2 Passion and Birth. Baka. I told you. We're making a child. Do you have any objections? If you'd like, we could have a contest of power, sarcastically replied Ophis. Between his hair and his blush, Great Red's face was completely red. Great Red is regularly a cheerful, carefree character, yet here we see him, not only embarrassed but showing affection and desire. Not only does he desire Ophis's unmatched body, but he had secretly desired kids and to continue his bloodline. After wiping his pathetic blush from his face, he let out a smirk and declared, "No objections at all, and please, I do not want to fight you. So, when are we making this hatchling?" "Right now," Ophis replied with pure intention. For the first time in his existence, Great Red got a nosebleed. Not a big one, just a bit of red coming out of his nose. His cheeks, which had just recovered from Ophis' earlier remarks, have been reimbursed in a flash of red, as well as Great Red's eyes becoming wide. Ophis looked confusingly at this, but Great Red wiped it off and the normal conversation continued. "Well, take off your clothes if we're going to just jump into this," Great Red eagerly exclaimed with passion emitting from his eyes. Great Red was a rather lustful fellow for someone who spent his time alone, but this rationalized the reason why he was looking for a mate in the first place and also explained his earlier rage when he was called a pervert. "All right," Ophis replies, completely unfazed by Great Red's remarks. She starts with her shirt, as it is not strapped on or buttoned up, due to her exposed breasts. Great Red's face became a lustful one, as his dragon instincts began to take over. Had the lady undressing in front of him not been Ophis, one of the two most powerful beings in existence, he would have already been inside her. Ophis, by the time Great Red finished with his daydream, removed her shirt completely, leaving her bountiful exposed breasts with black tape covering the nipples. These breasts were none like Great Red had ever seen. Great Red is told to be one of the longest living beings in the supernatural world, yet he had never, in his millions of years of existence and supremacy, had seen breasts as perfect as these. She had large, buxom, curvaceous breasts with light pink petite nipples peeking through the black tape that was covering them. As Great Red's hands start to sweat and his fingers begin to twitch, Ophis stares at him awkwardly and commandingly asks, "Why are you not taking off your clothes? We are going to be having sex, right?" Great Red's main magic affinity is fire, so he just burns his clothes off instantaneously. Great Red lends a cocky smirk, but Ophis, unfazed by this, just gives him an empty stare as she removes her skirt. At this point, Great Red was going internally crazy as he remained silent. Ophis threw her skirt and her jacket into the dimensional void, just for the sake of not having to keep track of it. After all, Great Red and Ophis can just generate clothes out of thin air. Great Red, whose skin was boiling at the sight of Ophis, begins to itch as Ophis slightly hesitates to remove her underwear. With Ophis's glistening thighs being shown and the folds of Ophis's womanhood beginning to protrude from her black lingerie, she starts to pull off the panties down in a slow and steady motion. Great Red can't stand it anymore. He's covered in sweat, standing there naked with his 8.5-inch shaft protruding into the depths of the dimensional gap, and is fighting his instincts to ravage Ophis. He just can't take it. Faster than visible, Great Red instantaneously appears in front of Ophis, who was at least 10 feet away from him, and proceeds to rip off her panties and burn them to a crisp. "Teasing little bitch, you're lucky you're about to experience heaven," Great Red growls at Ophis. Ophis, for some reason, completely unfazed by this, does absolutely nothing because she knows the only way Great Red will make a kid is if he's in control. As Great Red begins to ravage Ophis, starting with her womanhood, surprisingly, Ophis's hymen shattered. Great Red was slightly confused as he thought that a being that lived as long as she wouldn't be a virgin. Ophis, somehow unfazed by this, said in her usual, monotone voice, "Raise your fertility level to 100%. I only plan on going one round with you." Without any visual or auditory response, Great Red raised his fertility level to guarantee the chance of a baby being born. Speeding up, Great Red begins to viciously pound Ophis. His eyes, completely snapped open with visible blood vessels that seemed to poke out, stared into Ophis's soulless, gray eyes and whispers, "You enjoy this?" Ophis just blinked twice, almost as if she had spaced off entirely, but she heard everything Great Red had said. At this point, Great Red was only getting started off his goddess-like body. Ophis begins to tense as she climaxes, but lends no visual reaction. It's quite strange that Ophis is able to climax without showing any facial signs of arousal. Great Red let out a quiet moan but began pounding even faster. Pound after pound, gasp after gasp, Great Red is finally near climax. Great Red reaches his climax and makes Ophis his. Unlike usual, instead of his solution being an average chrome color, the solution was completely white. This is because of the increased fertility level. With Great Red slowly pulling out, Ophis, expressionlessly and boringly states, "We have to live with each other for 9 months while we wait for our hatchling to be born." Seriously? Great Red, with a furious, yet somewhat guilty face exclaimed, even though he secretly wanted to live with Ophis and get her to love him. Great Red was still confused by this, as he had never believed that Ophis, not only would willingly make kids with him, but live with him for 9 whole long months. Time skip 9 months. Great Red and Ophis begin to get along much better. Ophis shows slightly more emotion when conversing with Great Red, but shows an elegant, loving expression when she looks down at her child beneath her skin. This initially shocked Great Red, as Ophis would blush whenever he would notice. As the hatchling was ready for birth, Ophis, for the first time in her existence, seemed to feel immeasurable and inexplicable pain in her lower stomach. It was a constant pulse, as Ophis's face met her stomach due to the amount of pain she was feeling. She then felt her uterus dilate, and almost rip, and she let out a loud feminine scream. Great Red, subconsciously in a frenzy to find a way to comfort Ophis, rubs Ophis's stomach and hair, causing Ophis to slightly blush in embarrassment during all the pain she was experiencing. This is the most emotion Ophis had even shown in all of her years of existence. Ophis slightly turns her head and glances into the abyss of the dimensional gap due to her embarrassment. Soon enough, a leg can be seen protruding from Ophis. Ophis lets out a loud, ferocious roar, shaking the entire dimensional gap. Her aura began to fluctuate, she became pale and short of breath as another leg and a torso push against her constricting innards. Eventually, all came out except the head. Ophis screamed louder and louder. Great Red, as worried as he was extremely confused by the fact of Ophis being infinite and never experiencing pain in her whole lifetime, suddenly feeling immense pain. With one final roar, Ophis flushes the baby out completely. The baby was in human form. It had brunette hair with gold streaks in it, deep golden eyes, and enough power to wipe out a mid-ranking devil. Surprisingly, the child came out in a deep slumber. Ophis immediately embraces the child and hadn't even looked at the baby. All she wanted to do was hug it. Asleep in her arms, the baby subconsciously wore a calm grin and cuddled closer to its mother. Great Red, complacently gazing at Ophis and his new offspring, was nearly dumbfounded to see Ophis, the infinite dragon god, an emotionless all-powerful being showing so much emotion. The sight nearly brought tears to Great Red's eyes as he thought, "I love her so much." Great Red then approaches the mother and child, and warmly asks, "Is it a boy, or girl?" Ophis responds with a confused nod, as she, herself, didn't know. She held the baby up and discovered the hatchling was a boy. Great Red and Ophis had warm grins on their faces as they were both overrun by pulses of joy. Great Red was happy, knowing he would be able to raise a male hatchling. That's when it occurred to him, was he going to raise this child? Was Ophis going to take him? His imagination began to run unrestrainedly as terror built on his conscience. Sweat started running down his cheeks, his jaw dropped all the way to the underworld, and his yellow draconic eyes began to twitch. Ophis glanced at Great Red and, by the expression on his face, was able to tell what he was thinking, leading her to respond with commanding, "We're going to raise him here in the dimensional gap until he is old enough to take care of himself." Great Red let out a huge sigh as he thought that his own son would have no father figure. "So, what will this hatchling be named?" precariously asks Great Red. As Ophis is infinite, and Great Red is the strongest being alive, Ophis wanted a name to encapsulate all of the powers the world has to offer, as he would possess them. Issei, the Japanese word for all at once, Ophis warmly responds. "That's a great name. He will surely grow up to change the world," Great Red responds. In the old Satan faction of the Chaos Brigade hideout, where is Ophis? The corrupt member of the Beelzebub bloodline roars. Chapter end. That was a loaded chapter. Realized this was rated T, so I had to dial back the sexual language. Thanks for checking this out, and I appreciate all the support within the 2 days of release the first chapter. This is my first story, and this means a lot. So, the schedule for release. Twice 3 times per week. Yep, you heard me right. So plans for Issei. Not going to spoil too much as I want to leave a lot of room for creativity, but Issei will look how he does in the anime when he attends school. His normal human form is how he looks in the anime but with golden streaks in his hair. His dragon form is going to be a golden dragon bigger than Great Red. Now the interesting part. The harem. Who will be in the harem? OFC I will read suggestions, so leave a review with who you want in it. Issei will be as perverted as he is in the anime due to his father's genes. Harem member number 1 Rias Grimori. I think she's heavily underrated as most stories I read neglect her, and have the McDate Akano. There will be some unique members of the harem too, don't worry. This will be interesting to see, as Issei will be more dominant in this story. Chapter 3 Childhood and Danger. Ophis has been gone for 9 fucking months. She said she was going to see Tiamat, but after we sent Byoko there, Ophis was gone and Tiamat didn't acknowledge Ophis going there in the first fucking place, roared the corrupt Beelzebub who wore light orange hair and pitch black eyes. Shalba. Ophis isn't important right now. We still need to recruit more members in order for our movements to be optimal. I was thinking about recruiting the fallen angel, Kokobeel. He seems to support war and he's ridiculously powerful, so for now, let's just let Ophis be. She wants Great Red out of the dimensional gap, and that's why we're assembled today. She wouldn't abandon us, and she's our leader, she can do what she wants, the silver-haired teenager retorts. Shalba bit his lower lip and wore a frustrated expression as his entire face tensed. He then relaxes and lets out a smirk and remarks, "You always know what to say, don't you, Valley?" Well, there's nothing we can do. Even if all of us attacked Ophis at the same time, she'd just disintegrate us. While we wait, Valley, do you want to go see Kokobeel or do you have something better to do? I asked you to do it because I actually do have something better to do. I sense that the red dragon has been reincarnated somewhere in Europe. I'm just going to go check him out. Of course, I wouldn't kill a child, Valley responds. Take me with you, Naya. I've always wanted to have kids with a dragon. Maybe this kid will grow up to be worth my time, a slender feminine figure states as she emerges from the dimly lit portion of the hideout. The feminine figure was nearly as hot as Ophis. Between her full-blossomed Zaftig chest protruding from her sexy black kimono, her long, silky black hair, her black cat ears and tails, and her glistening yellow cat eyes, she was a true beauty. Looking at children as sexual partners. You have some problems, Kuroka, Valley retorted as he snickered at Kuroka's blushed face. Kuroka didn't try to defend herself as she was desperate to make a child with a dragon before the race went extinct. Valley would always reject her in a harsh manner, so she's given up on him. Valley and Kuroka then vanish to Britain, and Shalba stares out of the window and thinks, I'm getting a bad feeling about this. Time skip 5 years. The dimensional gap. Our Issei really has grown up, hasn't he, Ophis? Great Red warmly states with a calm smile. Yeah, our little boy has sprouted wings, learned how to control his energy, speak decent English, and properly fight at the age of 5. He really is his father's son, Ophis said warmly. Great Red is now used to Ophis showing emotions, as he had lived with her for years. I am too, Ophis. There's no question he will become stronger than you and I, but that leaves one final question, what is his trait? Great Red curiously asks. Trait. Ophis responds, not knowing what Great Red means. Well, I am the dragon of dreams, you are the dragon of infinity, what is he? Great Red responds, praying that Ophis would have an idea. No idea. As all dragons are filled with emotion, excluding me, there likely needs to be some sort of drastic emotional catalyst, Ophis retorts with a dull glint of worry in her eyes. She knew that Issei would have to go through a horrid experience in exchange for power, and this nearly brought her tears. Well, nothing we can do for now, except train him, Great Red responds, quenching the worry on Ophis's face. Ophis and Great Red turn with a warm expression to see Issei flying in circles, just playing around. Issei's flight began to slow down as he became more and more exhausted. He then comes to a complete stop and begins to pant. The brunette with gold streaks in his hair looks up at his parents as his golden eyes began to glisten. He was wearing a golden brown tank top, blue jeans, and some small leather shoes. At this point, Issei is only 5 years old, so he's pretty short, but as Issei is a dragon, he could change his body to how he wanted it. He wanted a modest, yet tough-looking body, so he gave himself a swimmer's boo, making him better looking than most adults. Even though he was fairly muscular, He still looked like a child as he wore a childish expression and had slightly grown out hair which was ragged on one side, but straight on the other. His hair looks how it does in the anime. Issei was beginning to retract his deep golden framed wings as he reciprocates his parents' warm smiles and slowly floated towards them. Ophis brought Issei into a warm embrace. Issei, with puppy eyes, asked his mother, "How are you and dad so strong? I want to be like you and beat all the bad guys." Ophis chuckled and responded, "Well, my little Issei, you need to train. The more you train, the better you get at fighting." Ophis's face became a worried one as she declared, "Your father and I have to go to the human world. We're going to go see what kids like you are doing at your age, as being with others is important, my little Issei." Issei begins to sob, but wipes the forming tears from his eyes and smiles, responding, "All right, see you later." Ophis then tears a rip in the middle of the gap that Great Red and Ophis begin to float through. Great Red is grinning because he is finally leaving his son to become independent, albeit for a short amount of time. Great Red vanishes into the depths of the rip, but Ophis looks back at Issei with a worrisome face, then turns and floats through. "Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad," Issei yells before Ophis vanishes. The gap immediately closed. While his parents were gone, he practiced releasing his energy to the farthest extent that he could control. A few hours later, Old Satan faction of the Chaos Brigade hideout. "You told me I'd meet your leader, but my interest is beginning to wane," a figure with red eyes and 8 fallen angel wings angrily remarks. This figure was wearing a black robe with many accessories. "This is worrisome. She has been gone for way too long, but there isn't anything we can do. She can literally be anywhere, then annihilate us if we disturb her, so it's fruitless if we look for her. Sorry, Kokobile, you may have to wait a little longer," the orange-haired Beelzebub responds. "But we can show you our target, Great Red," the silver-haired fighting maniac interjects. "Sounds like a fun way to burn time," Kokobile responds. A blonde-haired swordsman nods at Valley and draws his large, holy-looking sword from the sheath on his waist. He holds it out, letting it glisten in the sunlight peering through the windows. With a golden hilt and a crimson-silver blade, any swordsman would drool at the sight. The swordsman then slashes the air, opening a large, empty-looking void. Kokobile grinned at the sight. Kokobile, Valley, and Shalba then walked through the void, leaving Arthur, the swordsman, behind to close the void. The rest of the Valley squad was looking to recruit more people, so they weren't at the hideout at the time of this excursion. The dimensional gap Issei's parents had just left, but he noticed a ripple opening behind him. His draconic instincts put him on guard, as he sensed powerful presences. He knew that the presences were not his parents. He could sense that the auras of these people were near his level, but nowhere even close to his parents. As the Valley squad walked into the depths of the dimensional gap, Kokobile began laughing as he jokingly chuckled, "We're here for that little brat." He continued laughing as the rest of the crew wore confused looks on their faces. Shalba and Valley were thinking the same thing. Who is this kid? Why is he here? Where is Great Red? Issei, who was suppressing his power, let out a large-sized burst of aura, causing Kokobile to stop laughing, as the power emanating from Issei exceeded his own. Issei's aura was a glistening gold and would inspire awe to anyone who saw it. The fruits of just 2 hours of training definitely showed. His power pulsated outwards, as his hair slightly rose. The aura seemed divine, due to its color, but upon closer scrutinization, it was raw draconic energy. No, he's not going Super Saiyan, the Valley squad all began to sweat, as this power was greater than Valley's. They all thought, we need to take care of this kid, right now. Shalba was the first to assault Issei, as he used light magic to attempt to vaporize the kid. Issei just shrugged it off as it had no effect. Issei vanished, as the Valley squad began to look everywhere. It had seemed Issei's power had disappeared entirely, but when they looked up, they noticed Issei looking down on them with a cocky grin. The Veil squad looked up at him with peeved expressions. Issei would make the next move, as he charged at Shalba. He was faster than the eye could see, but his golden aura trail was glistening as it followed him, making Issei look like a shooting star. Issei then delivered a light-speed dropkick right into Shalba's stomach, knocking him extremely far. Shalba then looked back up to see Issei in the distance, as he noticed how far back he was blown. He began to cough up blood. Valley then tried going for the next blow as he reached for a punch, which Issei easily dodged. But, while Issei was dodging, Kokobile sent holy light swords at high speeds, puncturing Issei's back. This led Issei to cough up a slight bit of blood. Tch, Issei murmured as he noticed Valley backing off and going into his balance breaker. Vanishing Dragon. Balance breaker. Issei hears Albion roar from the sacred gear on Valley's right hand. He is then confronted by a mech-looking dragon form. All Valley knew was that he needed to land one blow on Issei, and it was over as he could just drain all of Issei's power. Issei actually smirked at this, as his draconic instincts made him want to fight more. Well, isn't it the fabled white dragon, one of the two heavenly dragons? My parents told me all about you, Issei says slightly menacingly in his high-pitched child voice. I sense you are a dragon, but I know of none that have this kind of power that isn't sealed away. I especially don't know of any that are this young. Just who are you? Albion questions as the blue lights on Valley's balance breaker illuminated every time Albion would speak. Shalba and Kokobile stared at Valley in shock, more specifically, the orb Albion was speaking from. They did not expect what they were fighting to be a dragon. That's none of your business. I was minding my business, just waiting for your master, Mom and Dad to come back, Issei replied, but he pinched his face as he wasn't supposed to reveal the identities of his parents. Issei was trying to be cool, as he thought he could scare them by mentioning their leader because Issei knew he wouldn't be able to take all of them at once. This was a massive blunder, and it was all due to Issei's proud personality. Kokobile caught his slip-up and began to stutter in fear. He then worriedly shouted, "You were going to say Ophis, the leader of the Chaos Brigade. She's your mother." Shalba and Valley didn't process this at first. It took a few seconds until terror began building on their faces. Issei began to back off as he knew he was going to get it from his mom. Kokobile then shouted, "Furthermore, there is only one being that lives in the dimensional gap, and you said, come back." Meaning, all three of the Chaos Brigade members began connecting the dots. Issei just sighed at this. Valley, Shalba, and Kokobile started feeling death envelop their ankles. This feeling of death began to rise as their hands began to drip in sweat and they all began to pant. Their eyes seemed to roll up into the backs of their heads as even more terror built as they all looked at the absolute monster in front of their eyes. If that didn't knock them out, they all realized that Kokobile just injured the son of Ophis and Great Red. Kokobile gave the most dramatic reaction, as he completely fainted. Shalba was thinking about his ambition to conquer the underworld, and how it would end here due to some slip-up like this. He also fainted, floating in the dimensional gap with Kokobile. Valley, the only one who kept a sliver of sanity, used the power of the vanishing dragon to open a ripple in the dimensional gap. Valley then grabs the other two and throws them in. Valley makes one final declaration, "We will be back." Another ripple began to open behind Issei, as Great Red and Ophis began to walk through. Valley was focused on Issei, so he didn't notice, but Issei did, as Great Red and Ophis stared in awe of their son. They saw his beautiful aura and dominant presence, and they just stood there with their eyes widened. As Valley began to go through the ripple back to his base, Issei wanted to get one final blow in, hopefully driving Chaos Brigade off for good. As he was above Valley, he made the same move he did against Shalba, but this time, sprouting his wings for additional speed. Issei launched himself at Valley, accelerating until he nearly reached the speed of light. With a huge trail of gold aura following him and with his wings sprouted, in a childish yet draconic voice, he roared, "Shooting star," as he plunged his right foot into Valley's stomach. Within a fraction of a second, Valley's eyes went completely white, his arms and legs extended, and his mouth was pried open, as he wasn't able to close it. Valley was then shot at blinding speeds into the ripple behind him. The shockwave of Issei's attack even forced Great Red and Ophis to cover their eyes a bit. Both ripples closed, as Issei began coughing up blood. Great Red had a proud grin on his face while Ophis was rushing over as fast as possible with tears flooding down her cheeks. Issei then passed out, only to be caught by Ophis who brought him into a warm embrace. Ophis was sniffling with streams of tears soaking Issei's chin. Issei was in pretty bad shape, due to Kokobile's spears that pierced his back. "My son. I'm so sorry," Ophis cried into Issei, as she buried her face in Issei's chest. "My son. That was beyond incredible. The power you just displayed went well beyond that of the leaders of the underworld. You are only 5 years old, and you are within the top 20 strongest beings in the world. You are truly remarkable, and I don't think it's a stretch to say you will become the strongest being in existence, Great Red stated with a proud, yet subtly warm expression on his face. Chapter end. Wow, that was a long chapter. That was fun to write. 3 chapters in the first week. Not bad. Thanks for the ridiculous amount of support. Analytics say we've gotten over 1,000 views within the first 4 days of release. That's ridiculous. I hope you guys stick with me and leave me some suggestions. The next chapter will be a lot of exposition, not much action. I think I haven't written it yet, so IDK, it will mainly be Ophis and Great Red trying to find out what to do after what happened with Issei. Read the bio of this story. It's pretty much what gonna happen next. Sasosa Harem member number 2 saving that for next chapter. P. Already spoiled y'all with 3 chapters in 4 days, y'all can wait for the next harem member. Chapter 4 Abandonment and Resolve. Why did this have to happen to my Issei? He's just a boy and he's already fighting for his life. What kind of world is this? Ophis roared with tears streaming down her face. I think it's time we let Issei go to the real world. He's not safe here anymore. The Chaos Brigade will surely come back and find some way to kill Issei, Great Red reasonably argued in an attempt to comfort Ophis. You can't mean. No. I object. He's my Issei. I. Ophis cried out as she began to squeeze the passed out Issei. I mean exactly what you think. Issei is capable of hiding his presence, and he is extremely strong. Did you see what he did to the White Dragon Emperor? He can definitely fight some of the strongest beings without difficulty. It's just numbers that are the problem. Furthermore, if we just shelter Issei, what kind of dragon will he become? The dragon of babies. Great Red continued to argue as his soothing voice began to morph into a ferocious roar. Great Red was extremely concerned about his son too, as he didn't want anything to happen to him. But, he also believed that Issei would be weak if he didn't live a normal life. Ophis blatantly rejected the notion of sending her son away, but she knew that if she didn't, he could end up dead. The thought of that nearly made her freeze. Ophis continued to sulk, wanting to do something for her little Issei. She seemed to be as still as a statue while hugging Issei, aside from the tears flooding down her cheeks, dripping out into the vacuum of the dimensional gap. Goodbye, my son. This was the last time Ophis would feel emotion for a long time. In a short bit, she would revert back to being the feelingless dragon of infinity that inspired fear into people's hearts, but Ophis didn't want that. Issei was the first thing that she felt she wanted to protect, but she knew that the more she loved him, the more she had to let him go. For his safety, Great Red and Ophis began preparations to send Ophis to Tannen's territory. 3 days later, Tannen's territory. When Issei finally woke up, he noticed that he was in an infirmary. He looked around to see 2 clear plastic tubes stretching over behind him, where he noticed that were connected to the wounds he had received from Kokobile. Although dragons can regenerate nearly any wound within a fraction of a second, Issei was only 5 years old and has not learned to channel his energy for regeneration. Issei then got up and ripped out the tubes. Ah! The lady standing next to the doorway yelled. She was in a white and red nurse outfit and had a brunette ponytail. She wore a hat that had a red cross on the front. She also housed quite a well-endowed chest. If anyone was going to nurse him back to health, he would want this lady to do it. Why would you just rip it out like that? The wound could have easily reopened and you would have died. You're the most stupid fucking kid I've ever had the discourtesy of meeting. The infirmary worker yelled. Yeah, I take that back, Issei thought to himself. Well anyway, what happened after I gave out? The 5-year-old boy asked, wishing to be spared from further verbal abuse. Well, we found a summoning circle in the main entrance, and an injured boy coughing up blood appeared. There was a note attached to you as well. It had a seal, and the front was red, for Tannen. Tannen. Oh yeah, that's the Blaze Dragon guy Mom told me about. The last thing I remember is being in my mom's arms as she was crying. Issei somberly recalled. You will probably have to see for yourself, the buxom nurse responded. Well, I'm out of here. It hurts really bad, but I don't have a choice. I miss my parents though. Speaking of which, where are my parents? Issei asked as he looked out of the open window to his left. When he looked out the window, it hit him. He was in the real world. Like, it wasn't just a void. It was real. Issei then immediately passed out due to this realization. Issei had never been in the real world in his 5 years of existence. The beauty of the velvety purple sky, the mountain ranges along with the rivers that raced through the lands, and the natural smell that protruded through the window completely removed Issei from the world, as if he had experienced heaven. About 2 hours later, Issei woke up in his nursing bed to the nurse sitting next to him. Issei's mind felt sluggish due to the lingering effects of the shock Issei had experienced. Issei rubbed his eyes and rose from his bed sitting straight up. Seriously. Don't rip out anything in you, unless you have approval. Just for next time, the nurse worriedly remarked. She wasn't too concerned because his vitals were fine as soon as he dropped. She just figured that it was added fatigue due to him ripping out those tubes. Well, I need to go home. My parents are probably worried, but first, where am I? Issei responds to the nurse. You are in the dragon nursing facility in Tannen's territory of the underworld. I don't know who you are or what business you have with Tannen, but all I know is that you're a young dragon, and young dragons need to be taken care of. The nurse responds with a glint of care in her expression, attempting to prevent Issei from doing anything rash. Issei then releases a little bit of his aura, attempting to scare the nurse and prove that he's not some baby dragon. Unlike Valley and Shalba who couldn't sense Issei's aura due to the dimensional gap, the nurse recognized Issei's power. It was the aura of infinity and the aura of dreams. She remembered these auras from the time Tannen took some dragons to see Great Red roam in the dimensional gap, and the times Ophis came to the underworld and did as she pleased, which was normal as far as Ophis went. The nurse knew who this kid was, and had about the same reaction Kokobile did. She was pretty much dead on the floor for about 15 seconds. After regaining the little sanity she had, she bolted towards the door. Issei just chuckled at this but soon realized his mistake. If people could sense his parents' energies and began fearing him, he would become known even more, and as such be targeted. Issei was very sharp and mature for a 5-year-old. This is likely due to his draconic instincts, and how a dragon's body internally develops faster than a human, devil, or anything of the sort. Issei heard the nurse from the other room, scrambling with what sounded like a phone, as he heard, "TTT Tannen-sama. Gray at red off come HH here. Now." Issei heard a slam, then the sound of high heels clatter on the floor as the nurse sprinted away. A summoning circle appeared on the floor in front of Issei. Issei wondered if it was Tannen. If it was, Tannen could remove the seal, as it was probably intended for him. Who are you and what are you doing in my hospital? The velvet dragon with yellow horns and deep purple eyes in a humanoid shape aggressively questioned. Oh, I'm just your average dragon. I got injured while fighting the Chaos Brigade, but I drove them away, Issei retorted with a grin on his face. That ought to scare him, Issei thought to himself. The Chaos Brigade. Do you mean those monstrously strong upstarts that want to kill Great Red? Speaking of Great Red, the nurse I was talking to said Great Red's name. What's your connection with Great Red and Ophis? Great Red asked with a slight shift of aggression in his voice. Shit. This backfired, Issei thought to himself. Issei was trying to hide the fact that Great Red and Ophis were his parents, but he just gave it away. A dragon's proud nature can be a true pain in the ass. Well, it would be best to tell him the truth, but swear him to secrecy. I could also ask Tannen to read the letter, having nothing to hide, Issei thought to himself. Promise not to tell anyone, Issei asserted to Tannen with a crescendo of aggression in his tone. Well, this is regarding Great Red and Ophis. If you truly do know them, I can see why you'd want it hidden. Alright, spill it, kid. I promise not to tell anybody. On my life, Tannen argued with extreme confidence in his tone. Issei knew Tannen wouldn't lie, as he was a dragon. All dragons are true of their word, it's how they're made. Very well. My name is Issei. As for my relationship with Great Red and Ophis, they're my parents. The 5-year-old dragon got etched into Tannen's mind. Issei though, clenched his fist as he mentioned their names, as Issei believed they abandoned him. Tannen's reaction began with complacency. A son. Of Great Red. Of Ophis. Tannen thought at first. It took him a couple of seconds to comprehend the meaning of this as he began to sweat. He didn't pull a Kokobile and pass out, but he was still in an extreme state of shock. I didn't mishear you. Correct. Great Red asks, in confirmation of his worst fears. Nope. I meant what I said. You want proof? Issei exclaimed before letting a decent bit of his power out. Tannen subconsciously dropped on his knees in fear and asked, what is a superior being like you doing here? Well, I got messed up pretty badly by the Chaos Brigade, as they came to the dimensional gap and tried to kill me. Next thing, I woke up here, Issei explained. Oh yeah, can you remove the seal on this note? It seems to be directed towards you. It was stuck to me when I got teleported here, apparently, Issei graciously asks Tannen. Anything for you, young lord, Tannen chivalrously responded. Tannen was a firm believer in chivalry, and that if one is stronger than you, it is your duty to do their bidding. Young lord. Not bad, Issei mockingly stated while Tannen was breaking the seal on the note. The seal contained immense power and resistance, but Tannen could handle it. The seal shattered, releasing a small shockwave into the air, and Tannen read the letter aloud. Dear Tannen, please heed our call to help. Our son, Issei, has been targeted by the Chaos Brigade, and we need help sheltering him from them. Please take him into custody and train him, but him to live a double life. Change the memories of a childless couple in the human world into believing that Issei is their son, and have Issei live with them. Also, have him attend human school and participate in social events. After all children need social time. I understand you may be concerned with why we chose not to live with Issei and give him to you. To reiterate, Issei is in danger whenever we leave him alone, and you are the most dependable dragon in existence. Please keep him safe, teach him about dragons, and try and invoke his true power. With much thanks, Great Red and Ophis, Tannen was in shock of this letter, as he was going to have to train this boy. Issei unexpectedly let out a sob and began sniffling. Regardless of if it were for his own safety, he was just abandoned by his parents. He would never be able to cheer, laugh, cry, and be happy with his real biological family. Are you okay, young lord? Tannen asked, trying to uncover the source of Issei's troubled face. Issei's sobbing halted, as a little aura began to excrete from Issei. His hair covered his eyes, as he got up from his bed and walked outside of the hospital. Tannen was behind him but said nothing as he felt the murderous intent in Issei's aura. Tannen knew that disrupting him would lead him to his death. Issei sprouted his golden wings, as Tannen was in awe of the beauty emanating from them. Issei then flew to the nearest Rurual mountain and released an incredible amount of aura. The mass Issei produced was his aura, but it had a completely different vibe to it. It was formed with pure rage. Imagine being abandoned by your parents because you aren't strong enough to protect yourself. It would make anyone lose their shit. Issei's energy alone completely enveloped the mountain, then in a fraction of a nanosecond, the mountain just disappeared. It was just gone. No debris, no explosion, no shockwave. Only a huge crater left in the mountain's stead. Tannen nearly passed out in both fear and awe. No child, let alone being in all of existence, had the capability of this. But Tannen was an opportunist. As Issei likely couldn't control the power he just displayed, Tannen tried to deduce Issei's true power is. I am the Blaze Meteor Dragon, Great Red is the Dragon of Dreams, and Ophis is the Dragon of Infinity. So what is Issei? Tannen thought to himself this discovery had to wait, as a passed-out Issei laid in the middle of the newborn crater. Issei then woke up a couple of seconds later and quietly sighed, so much better, as the tension from his aura released with each gasp. For a 5-year-old, this power was not only unheard of but Issei's general expression and life outlook represented that of a teenager. Tannen then said, Young master, you will be in my care, as it is your parents' final wish for you. You may call me Tannen, but Tannen Onisama wouldn't hurt. I will train you to be the strongest dragon, no, the strongest being in existence. Tannen asked for the sake of asking, what is that power you displayed just now? You just vaporized the whole mountain without a trace. Oh, that, no clue. I was just really mad, Issei responds without a care in the world. He is just a 5-year-old, he obviously wouldn't know what that power was, just as Tannen thought. Well, no matter. Let's go to my lair. You will meet the other dragons your age and we will get your home in the real world setup as well, Tannen remarked. Issei had a bright expression on his face until Tannen said, home in the real world. Issei was still depressed at the fact that his parents had abandoned him, but he shrugged this off, as there was nothing he could do. All Issei worried about was if he was abandoned for his safety, or if it was because he was a nuisance or weak. Issei thought himself to be quite upstanding and nice, but maybe he was unconsciously hurting his parents. He shook this notion off and responded to Tannen, "Yes, sir." Time skipped 2 years. The human world Issei grew up under Tannen's gruesome onslaught of training. Issei, as strong as he already was, needed discipline. He learned how to control the elements of fire and lightning to their utmost limit, but he couldn't draw out the power that he released at the mountain. Tannen was disturbed by this, but there wasn't anything he could do. Tannen figured Issei needed some sort of catalyst, but building basic skills was more important than learning some power like that, as Issei wouldn't be able to control it. Issei also learned the basics of magic itself. He learned how to create summoning circles, create barriers, and even illusions. Although Tannen taught Issei magic, he also taught him hand-to-hand combat. Issei mastered his shooting star as a finishing move. Issei could now go toe-to-toe with people like Seraphel Leviathan or Ajuka Beelzebub. Tannen instructed Issei not to draw out his dragon form, as powering up in his human form would help master his dragon form. Issei, not knowing how to use his dragon form, disregarded this and trained in human form as he was told. Issei also grew to resent his parents. To him, they were all he had, and to be abandoned the way he did with no answers really affected him. The only thing Issei wished for was his parents to tell him what really happened, but these feelings were eventually forgotten due to the hatred Issei built. "I'm home," Issei Hayadu exclaimed throughout a small shack in the nearby suburbs of Tokyo, an area called Kuo. "Welcome home, honey," a brunette lady with a brown ponytail and a stripped periwinkle sweater with black jeans exclaimed in response. This lady was Issei's human world mother. Issei's new last name was Hayadu, making Issei's name Issei Hayadu. Issei sat down on an ebony-legged white leather-padded dinette chair with his new parents at a dry brown circular wooden dinette table. By this point, Issei was 7 years old and had stowed away memories of his biological parents in the back of his mind as he grew to further resent them. Issei then dug his teeth into some fresh Japanese curry his new mother had prepared him. Contrary to his thoughts, he enjoyed his new family more than he thought. He reverted the memories of his new parents back to what they were prior to Tannen altering them to have Issei seem to be with them since birth. He then changed their memories to make it seem as if they adopted Issei, so Issei would feel their bond as real, and not forged. Issei's new father walked down the stairs, clad in a white sweater, black jeans, slicked back black hair, and had a bunch of wisdom hairs glistening through the pitch darkness. He said, "Hey Issei. Welcome home." Issei felt nothing but love for his new parents. He felt nothing but true warmth and no conflict from his new family. Issei had been living with his new family for about 6 months, due to his training with Tannen. Part of Issei's training was to live independently off the land. He made his own food, shelter, and did whatever he wanted aside from meeting with Tannen for long hours each day for rigorous training. As for his new living space, it certainly took some getting used to, as Issei was used to the infinite dimensional gap and the large landscape of Tannen's territory. Issei's new house was 3 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. He lived upstairs in the room across from his parents. He had his own bathroom and walk-in closet, but his room felt extremely claustrophobic for him. Following cleaning the dishes, Issei walked up the wooden stairs into his room wearing a warm smile. In the dimensional gap, "Where is that fucking kid?" the White Dragon Emperor roared, flaunting a grotesque scar on his stomach. Chapter end. Sorry for the delay, guys. I've been writing this for 5 whole days. This chapter took a lot of thinking as it surfaced a lot of exposition as to Issei's character, his life, and his relationship with his parents. Holy shit. 3K views and 90 followers. I don't deserve this holy shit. Seriously, thank you to everyone that's been reading this. I appreciate it more than anything in the world. This is my first fanfic, and I expected nobody to read it, but this support provides fantastic motivation to keep working. This is similar to Son of the Dragon Gods, but it's just my spin on it. It will diverge shortly. The next arc will be a battle with the Chaos Brigade. Following that, time skip to high school where he meets Yuma Tilda-chan. Shit gonna end differently. If you're wondering about Issei's power, this probably took the most thinking as to what kind of dragon he will be. I'll give y'all a hint. When Issei did the explosion thingy on the mountain, what do you think happened to the mountain? Alright. I made y'all wait long enough with the second harem member. Harem number 2. Kuroka. I personally think Kuroka is an underexplored character who is hot as shit. That's why Kuroka wasn't in the fight versus Issei. She probably would have died lol. I currently haven't thought of the rest of the chars, but a couple of the chars that 99% most likely won't be in it are Kaneko, Revel, Chad. Issei ain't into kids, Asia, and Xenovia. Both of them won't be in the story.